Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FTX podcast. Good to have here with me today, Sobi from VectorSpace.ai. Welcome, dude.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me, man.
Good to have you on. For those listeners that may not know you, would you mind just telling a bit about yourself and your background and what you're up to?
Yeah, I've been in crypto for a while. I really got introduced way back in the day in like 2011 or 12. I was playing a lot of Team Fortress 2, and there was these hats in this game that you could trade. And the way it would work when you would trade them is you would add like an account, and that would work as like the escrow account that you would trade to, but you would ultimately get paid in Bitcoin. And the website that used to do this ended up becoming Wax, World Asset Exchange. So that's when I first got introduced to Bitcoin. I was really mining hats. And then I made a couple $1,000s that summer, kind of ignored it for a while, and got more involved around 2017, like 18, really based on smart contracts. So that was really interesting, and started diving into DeFi and smart contracts pretty early, like getting into SNX, Aave, Chainlink, of course, things like that. And those directional bets worked out pretty well. And now I'm moving away from just being a proprietary kind of trader guy and speculating on my own, and we're raising a fund. We have some capital moves already. It's called Syslink Ventures, but we'll go live in a couple of weeks. Keep everyone updated on that. But yeah, so that's where we're at now, and it's been an exciting journey. Every day is different in crypto, and there's always new use cases to explore, so it's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, what gets you so excited about smart contracts in general?
I think at the most inherent level, like smart contracts allow you to do business with anyone in the world, regardless of what language you speak and what currency you transacted. I think that's what makes it a little bit more powerful than just what e-commerce has done to business, right? And the trustless executions of everything is really interesting to me because, for instance, I could, there's some application out there that you and I could bet, like say on a football game or a basketball game, and we could just have a smart contract escrow our payment. And normally I'll bet on sports games with my friends, and it's just kind of annoying to have to text someone like, hey, could you send me that like $50 in the game we bet tonight, blah, blah, blah. And it's just seamless and trustless. Even at a personal level, something like that is interesting to me. But then when you apply it to something like taking out a loan on a decentralized, or not even decentralized, just a money market, that's really interesting that I can just take out this loan by having collateral. I don't really need to have a credit rating, right? Even though I think we'll start seeing credit delegation in the future. But really, it's just that easy. I put up collateral, boom, I just pay back that smart contract, and I'm not really worried about defaulting on a loan. So that's a nice bit of innovation on traditional finance and debt, I guess. But in general, I just think it's really powerful what smart contracts will eventually allow you to do. And even beyond crypto, everyone talks about automation. If we have the workforce is automated, a lot of smart contracts are going to drive that as well. Like whether that's automation of workflow for business systems, or like freighting and like that whole parallel as well.
Mm-hmm. And what is you said you invested in some of these projects pretty early on, just in this directional bet. What kind of called you to those projects particularly?
I think they're just really interesting. That's really what it is. It's like Aave has come, or Land, or ETHLand, whatever you want to call it, has come so far from its inception, right? To even like where the AUM or total value locked, whatever you want to call it, is so large. But I think a platform that's really transformed a lot is SNX, right? Like SNX really introduced yield farming before anyone else, and that was kind of interesting too. The concept of having like a wrapped synthetic asset with an oracle as a price feed. Right? That was a really interesting ecosystem. So I think a lot of my investment approach comes from what is like the ecosystem going to be for this project, right? Or like how does it plug in instead of, it's not like a lot of things are very speculative in crypto, right? And I think during this time, people were really speculating on like supply chain stuff. That's like one use case of smart contracts. But I just think for supply chains, people just use enterprise chains. So if this ecosystem doesn't basically benefit from a network effect, what's the point? Like even with automated market makers, the incentive is you're paying the LPs instead of the money that they would make from, like with a centralized order book. Right? And there's two different paradigms, whichever one you subscribe to, but there's still incentives about it. And if you are applying these traditional frameworks into new innovative ways to interface with financial activities and products that we're already used to, I think that's what kind of draws me to these things. Right? Like, oh, I'm basically to stake. Like what I always thought was really interesting about synthetics in particular is when I'm staking, I'm really printing a debt note, right? And I can also use that debt note, like that SUSD. I could either put it through Curve and make it, different stable coin and get exposure to other altcoins, or whatever synthetic assets there are out there, I can get exposure to them. I always thought that was a really interesting way to go about like the whole proof of stake thing, right? And then they launched all the incentive programs, and that's like what's really exciting about some crypto projects have really impressive communities. Like you go into the synthetics Discord, for example, it's just a high IQ Discord. You have people who are like building tools to view like like the synthetics tool guys. You can look up your wallet, see how much you're supposed to get this week for the period, how many fees you generated, or how many fees are out there, like the total value locked, etc. And that's all just like part of the community. Even I think when FTX like launched the quant room, I was in the Telegram and the channels and like in the chats, and everyone was like really helpful with all the documentation, because sometimes I don't think for instance, the synthetic asset game and derivative game, I think it's going to be very crowded. We're seeing a lot more people kind of step into it now. Things like perpetual protocol and stuff coming in, and there was Future Swap back in the day too that had their alpha, but that doesn't. I don't think that matters. Like in terms of these protocols are gonna like the ones that are gonna win, in my opinion, are the ones with strong communities and really good documentation, basically. And support. Like and that's what like Ethereum has. That's an advantage for now, at least too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like easier to interface because there's so many resources to pull from.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's very true. The community aspect is really powerful. That's why, in some sense, I kind of hope for a blockchain crypto space where all these blockchains can interface with each other, so that you can be a community of one, but also be able to participate in the others without having to relegate yourself only to that chain. And I think we're seeing more and more of that coming up. Do you think interoperability is something that's possible between blockchains, or do you think it's going to have to come down to competition?
I think it's definitely possible. I think it's just a very difficult technical solution. You have to worry about custody too, right? When you're moving from one code base to another. But even then, like you could always go through them like a wrapper, right? You could wrap BTC or ETH or like Solana or Ethereum or whatever on one chain and then put it onto another. But what I think what's going to be interesting about once interoperability is possible is the paradigm shift among investors and like especially retail traders. People are crypto is very cultish, right? You might not have had any exposure or even known about DeFi if you were just like a Bitcoin maximalist until really August or like September, when it really started getting really hyped and picked up by the mainstream crypto like media cycle. But if you were more of an Ethereum maximalist, you might have been, on Uniswap years ago, right? You might have got a hefty uni airdrop and all this stuff too. So it's really like your tribe in crypto really determines your asymmetry if you're doing well in the market and how you're abusing that. So I think when interoperability becomes a thing, it might actually be just good in general for like liquidity across the market, because people will quit being so attached, I guess you could say, and like using their chain, which is it's very interesting phenomena though. Like people are taking a piece of software and they're like, this is like a part of my personality. Like I love this thing. I want to go to bat for it on Twitter. Like people don't make Amazon bull like Twitter accounts. You know what I mean? They don't feel that strongly about it. Even big traders and stuff. But in crypto, it's just interesting because I think it's because people believe this technology is going to innovate and change parts of the world. And I think by via DeFi and centralized insurance and things like that, it will. But yeah, I think interoperability is definitely possible, and it's pretty strong too. Like even the small effects that we're seeing now with wrapped BTC, I think that's extremely bullish for BTC. If I'm going to take out a huge loan, and I have to use crypto as collateral, and I'm not going to, if I don't have exposure to stable coins, I will probably use wrapped like BTC because that's the most liquidity. I don't have to worry about an insane flash crash like I do on other assets. And throughout this whole DeFi correction, if you will, BTC's been pretty bullish. So yeah, maybe interoperability is the new layer 2 event, because what if you don't have to innovate on one layer 1 and you can just move on to another layer 1 that has a lot of layer 2s on it. So it's just good for the ecosystem as a whole, I think.
How has this whole DeFi season been for you? What have you been up to within it?
Dude, it's been so stressful. You just don't sleep really. I think, it's funny because people are always going to these contracts, and there's always the chance to get rug pulled, but it's nice that we know some developers that do like soft audits for us a little bit. But if that wasn't possible, I think it'd be even a little bit more scary than what it's been, because I'm honestly just really surprised that a huge hack didn't happen. There's been a few rug pulls that happened that I've avoided personally. But beyond that, like the DeFi season was interesting. I got pretty bearish actually in September about everything. It was really around like after this whole sushi fiasco. And in general, I don't think like DeFi got bastardized for a little bit, I think, during the run, where it went from less things, like DMM or like Aave or even SNX or like interesting protocols like Curve, to really weird stuff. Like even something like Ample was pretty interesting, right? With like a reflexive money supply, but to just food meme coins where there was like no use case for the coin at all, but you just farm it with your liquidity and then you dump it. But it was really interesting that a lot of people didn't understand what liquidity provision, like what providing liquidity on Uniswap really means. A lot of people suffered impermanent losses. And I never really farmed any pool ones, but the whole run was interesting. It was hectic. And now what I find, what I really like about what's happening now is that since everything's calmed down a little bit, you can kind of weed through which projects are legit and which aren't, and here for the long haul, because it's all about the projects that are building right now.
Mm-hmm.
We had some projects had some drama, and those teams are still around and just building. I think that provides a lot of confidence for me. But also something that I think to keep in mind is that crypto is a very atypical industry in the sense that you can interface with a lot of the thought leaders and the innovators in the industry just on Twitter or even on Telegram. Like you can't do that in other industries. And you know what I mean? It's a little interesting to me that like some of the big mover and shakers or even the prop traders and funds are all communicating, and the access isn't that hard to reach. And I think that is what attributes to some of the drama and I guess lack of like regulations too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you were saying you also work with VectorSpace.ai. What do they do? What's VectorSpace?
So we're actually a really innovative company in the machine learning parallel. So we use natural language processing and natural language understanding, which really just means processing written language. And we use that to find hidden relationships across different entities. So we basically, in one way to sum it, we create on-demand correlation matrices, and we create a lot of data sets just using real-life information, or if you will, because we can just augment an existing piece of data or data set with what's really going on in terms of news, or it could be, for instance, we released a data set with a bunch of drugs that could be repurposed to combat COVID with in combination with the government, the United States government, and Amazon, and that was all about just processing articles and research articles written by the National Library of Medicine. But beyond that, you can use it for trading purposes, right? Like we used dexamethasone, the treatment that Trump got. We created a basket of stocks that had a correlation with it a few months ago when research around dexamethasone started popping up through our algorithms, showing that it's doing a good job of combating coronavirus. But beyond that, you can really just find relationships across any entity types, and we can use that to generate a signal in financial markets, or allow you, say if you work in like material sciences or any life sciences industry, to help you come up with new hypotheses and test those hypotheses. And things have been going well. We're working with a lot of big companies, and yeah, it's really exciting. Our CEO is an absolute Chad. He's just been around the game for a while. Most of the team came out of Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and they did a lot of work with the DoD, Department of Energy, and Michael I. Jordan. They've written some papers with him. Michael I. Jordan is the guy behind the AI systems at Ant Financial, and they're going public with a really large IPO. It's been exciting. It's cool to work in an innovative company, and technology, and then also be at the forefront of innovation and like digital assets as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how did you get involved in vector space? Why did that happen for you?
Dude, I saw their ad like on a website like crypto-careers.com like a year and a half ago or something. And it was to be a trader there, like use the data sets and trade. And I just applied, and I had a great conversation with Cation Franks, our CEO. We just got along real well, and he had a lot of knowledge. He was actually saying that in our conversation in 2019, he would always say that there's going to be a black swan event that happens and it's going to crash the financial markets. And the corona happened. It was kind of eerie. That's a real conversation, but yeah, we just got along, and then asked to join the team since it is like a startup. You wear a lot of hats. Like you're literally a Swiss Army knife in human form at FTX, and that's a pretty well capitalized cryptocurrency company too. But people just wear a lot of hats when you're at a forefront of like a innovative company where things aren't always like they don't need to clearly be defined because everyone's task based and results oriented. But yeah, just kind of grew there with the company, did more and more stuff. I took on like more responsibilities, and now just doing a lot of data set curation, I guess, right? And on top of that, leading like a fundraising round and dealing with like other crypto partnerships and stuff. We're just on Uniswap and like a couple other centralized exchanges right now. Probit, I think, but yeah, it's because we've kind of been in stealth a little bit, but it's an interesting project, dude. It's really exciting, and there's a lot of what I think it makes it a little atypical from most crypto projects or crypto companies too, is that we have a pathway to revenue, and a lot of companies don't have that at all. Like we're already generating revenue, and our like deals that we have, our pilot programs, big enterprise customers are going to translate into like really good cash flow. It's a good use case, and we just provide. The reason why we use a blockchain is for data provenance, because you can't alter right on a blockchain, obviously. So we use that hash of hashes to create like the data provenance pipeline, which is the supply chain for your data. It makes it really easy to go and check like what calculations were done to your data, what the data sources are, and if there's any collisions on the hashes, it makes troubleshooting for engineers really easy. And on the wallet side, private key is just the same as like a private key for like an API. No point for data scientists, like the guys that are actually interfacing with our stuff. It's a one-on-one match for them, and it's one of the few crypto kind of integrations or blockchain integrations that's made sense to me for kind of bridging some type of service onto chain with a utility token that actually makes sense. But yeah, beyond that, everything's going good. We have some good PRs out. We're also doing a lot of the unsupervised machine learning for CERN's data. That's really interesting. The end goal is really to be attached to some crazy research out of CERN. Mm-hmm. But that's a privilege to be working with them too. And Roshan, our engineer at that end, he's doing a great job leading that relationship there, and just being a great researcher.
That's awesome. You want to show us the pup you have on your lap?
Oh yeah, dude.
The cutie pie.
Oh, she's so cute.
What's her name?
Cleopatra, but I just call her Cleo for short.
Cleo. It's a little cutie pie.
Yeah, dude,
and real quick, with the fund you're raising, like what's your objective there? Why'd you decide to do it? Like what's the rationale?
I had worked at a fund before, but then the bear market happened, so I killed a lot of stuff. And I think me and my partners, we were right a lot with what's going on in the markets. And I think over the last several years of growing as traders and speculators, I guess it's gone really. We have a clear edge in the market, and our network has also grown. Joel Dietz is an advisor to our fund, and he is one of the founders of MetaMask and one of the founding members of Ethereum. The dude also worked on the MVP of Salesforce. He's like absolute Chad. But it's just kind of interesting. We've been networking a lot, and by virtue of our network, people really, a lot of people have an appetite for crypto. They want to allocate to crypto, and all of our, my GPs and I were all like pretty well intentioned and we get along. Like we're really sociable in person, and so we saw this demand for the services that we provide. And I think we're just really in tune with the market in terms of like the Anons and like the Chainlink Marines and all these guys that like fight these meme wars. You have like that darker kind of broad side of crypto, and then you have, you know, like the professional dudes, like, you know, guys like you and like Matt K, like the Blockhead Capital guys, or you know, Andre or Sam, guys like that. It's really nice that our team has good relationships with both sides of crypto, and you know, it just made kind of sense to do it now with the fact that we made a lot of money in the markets recently. God bless. And the projects in the, I guess our thesis is maturing and being like proven to be shown that it has some merit, because we're not just like, I truly believe that, for instance, like the Oracle problem, and I think that's a winner take all market. There's some people that believe that multiple different Oracle solutions can exist. I personally don't. I think Chainlink is going to be the end all be all. So I have a directional bet on that, right? And that's been going really well. I mean, besides the recent dip into the market as a whole, but that's like one instance, not to give out too much sauce. And I think we just see the market clear. And yeah, we just see this opportunity now with our own personal wealth and the people around us to spin up a vehicle. And also we really like want to invest in projects that move things forward, right? Like there's so much scammy stuff out there because reputation is really important, I think, especially in crypto. I would go as far to say that reputation is the only really currency we like, only real hard currency we transact. And so we want to be attached to projects that are actually moving forward innovation in society and like what we think the ethos of decentralized finance and really decentralized applications in general is that we want to give them money. You know, we want to give money to Gitcoin. I think the decentralized communities are going to be huge, especially with a lot of the innovation that's going on in the DAO space. And we want to build in that space, not just be like capital allocators, but be almost like not really activist investors, but to a certain degree, like be similar-ish to Framework Ventures in the sense that, you know, they do a lot for the projects that they invest in with like tying together their other portfolio companies, and we want to do the same. You know, network effects are very powerful.
And what do you think is happening kind of on the macro scale right now for crypto and blockchain? That because I mean, you must have some rationale there that gets you excited to want to build this fund as well.
Oh, dude, big time. I think that the thesis for crypto has never been better. With everything that's going on in the geopolitical landscape, China just, you know, basically airdropped $1.5 million worth of like digital currencies. And I think if we see central bank currencies that are like digital central bank currencies or whatever the acronym is, I forget. When those go live, I think that's part of a huge paradigm shift. But beyond just currencies, what I think is more interesting is what you can do with tokenized assets and digital assets. I was talking to someone who is a CFO at a really large fund, like several billion AUM, and he thinks tokenization is really interesting. I thought initially the conversation was just going to be like tokenization of like hard assets, like land and stuff, right? And even, you know, that's obviously an interesting concept too, but there's advanced topics within that where, say, if I tokenize a piece of real estate and it has a credit delegation to it, I can deposit it into Aave and take a loan out against it. That would be a really interesting concept that I think we will see something like that pretty soon in the future. I wonder if there's other platforms that will provide that, but he was taking the conversation even further than that, talking about tokenization of IP, right? Like if we tokenize, like, or not we, let's see Disney tokenize 10 to 20% of some of their assets, like their IP, that's a new way to fundraise, I guess, if you will. And you can even take it one step further and argue that then most companies are undervalued. And I think with what's going on with on-risk assets and in the macro scene, if we do decide to like inflate the dollar, that means all these other assets need to just move. They're basically just begging asset allocators to get into riskier asset classes. I think as the digital asset class matures, that asset class is going to be the one where the money piles in. And for people like us that have been in this class for a while before, it's very, very good for us. Obviously, everyone's bag pumps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I think is going to happen. Honestly, not even kind of. I definitely think that's where the trend's going to go. It just makes a lot of sense to me. And I think the reason why tokenization hasn't taken on before is just because a lot of exotic assets haven't been tokenized. What if they tokenized 10% of the Eiffel Tower? People would throw money at that in just a novel way, even if they weren't like serious capital allocators. But if there's enough people crowdfunding it, it could be done. And that's one way for a public government to receive more funding or privatize a part of a public utility or public landmark. So there's tons of different conversations that can be had. But right now it's just been, think about it from the project perspective. If you're a tech company and you want to tokenize real estate, well, okay, you're getting funding to get engineers and figure out all in America, especially like the legality of everything. You're not also using that fundraising to go and buy real estate and property and then tokenizing it. It's just not, it just doesn't make sense. So I think it's kind of a like chicken and egg problem almost, where there's people that want to tokenize real estate, but there aren't people that want their real estate tokenized yet, or they don't have a risk tolerance where they don't really understand it yet. I think once that divide breaks down, we'll see some really interesting stuff happen.
Yeah, and I think that, but also it isn't super clear how real world assets are owned on the blockchain yet, as far as legality, as you were saying, depending on jurisdictions and whatnot. So I think that could also be playing a part in what's limiting this for now. But as these tokenized assets gain more clarity going forward, I definitely see it happening. I mean, it's just too easy and too simple for it to not happen, and it just cuts out too many middlemen for it to not happen. And I think, as long as our capital markets continue being relatively efficient, they're going to search for more efficient means to allocate capital and to move assets around, and tokens seem a lot more better, as they'd say in Hawaii, more better than like having a land title in a drawer somewhere in your office or whatnot. So I'm excited for that as well. I wanted to see what happened with DMM. I was kind of sad that they didn't get any traction because they were trying that, right? That was kind of their premise.
I think the reason why I like DMM, I think the team is really competent behind it. There was a pretty funny moment where they bought like a Pilates like plane, and I just thought that was ridiculous. I voted for it just because I thought it was ridiculous. Like a DAO is owning a plane, like a business plane. I think they might have been a little too ambitious to start. So you have to roll out governance, right? Like we're seeing this across all these different protocols. Governance isn't something that was a default feature, and now with this DeFi run, everyone's talking about governance. So I think we're getting a lot more sample sizes, or the sample size has grown a lot, and we're getting a lot more data on how governance really does work, right? Because we talk about it all the time, but what's it look like in an application? You have projects like Cream where it is decentralized governance, but there's a few guys that are voting and they have a lot of the tokens. So is that really like governance? Like what is going on there, right? And then there's like not even like scam projects, but there's like smaller projects that are bootstrapping community that are doing their governance. And then you have, Curve doing their governance. Like it really was a lot of like Ethereum improvement protocols were most of the ones passing. And now, people are voting for things like YAM improvements and, and Wi-Fi stuff too, like YIPs. But I think, I don't know. I'm curious to see really what's going to happen when like we see a trend of like decentral or like protocol politicians, if you will, right? I think with governance, we're seeing a lot of people sit idly with their votes. And what if I could like just stake my vote into you instead of like, I felt like Sam just got sushi dumped on him, for instance. Imagine what if like the people that were holding sushi like just staked their votes in sushi and like Sam, like, hey, I want you to just vote for me. I think that's one way to sidestep like not like it's just a really not even sidestep. I think it's just a really interesting take on like representative democracies. Now I get to choose who my representative is, right? Like, oh, I want you to like I have a bunch of this token or whatever in governance and voting, and I don't know what to do with it, but I trust you. Like, I want to just give it to you or like stake it to you for to vote for me.
Mhm.
And I think that's going to be an interesting trend if like decentralized applications really take on. But then, going back to the legality thing, like how does that work? There's so much stuff that in crypto we just do that isn't clearly defined by law yet, and there's a lot of regulatory uncertainty right now. I think that's not very good for the market, because how many of these DeFi tokens could possibly considered, like, they could be considered securities? You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, straight up.
It's pretty wild.
People just did it though. They didn't give a shit. They're like, bro, I know the code. I'm gonna launch these contracts, and people just threw money at them. So that's what I'm kind of not bearish on, but just mindful of. Like, I like some DeFi tokens, but I'm not gonna keep like huge allocations and stuff that isn't like listed on Coinbase or like at least listed on like FTX International in terms of like due diligence. Because even like I missed out on a lot of like the breeder DAO stuff, but I had some interest in it, and I didn't get rugged on it though. But that thing literally just straight rug pulled, and that was something I thought it was like one of the smaller market cap coins that was really starting to catch on. I saw a lot of people like talking about it, and mostly because of like what's going on with DAOs. But that was just a straight rug pull too. It's just really weird that some people are making a lot of money in the markets and some people are losing a lot of money in the markets.
Yeah, well, I think that's how it goes, man.
Yeah.
If anyone's making a lot of money, it's because there's someone on the other side of that trade. So
I'm always surprised by that, dude. But like that, people are just getting straight scammed, bro. That shit's crazy to me.
Yeah, there's been a lot of rug pulls. And for those listeners that don't know what a rug pull is, it's like some vulnerability within the protocol or within the system that allows for individuals to basically walk away with all the assets either locked on that platform or just sell infinite tokens until the value of that token goes to zero or whatnot.
Yeah,
so
they just drain your liquidity from the pool, so you just lose your money.
There's been a lot of those lately. And kind of going back to that, I wanted to ask you a little bit. I've seen there's a lot of debate about AMMs versus central limit order books and stuff on Twitter right now. Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think AMMs at their current state are flawed, but they're also in their infancy, right? I think, like, for instance, I think central limit like order books are going to be necessary moving forward. But I think the concept of an AMM is really interesting. I would like to see AMMs that are somehow adjusting to, like, basically building on top of the balancer model. I think a network of multiple AMMs can create a large amount of liquidity for a certain amount of time, but I don't think it can create prolonged activity. So I think somewhere down the line, a hybrid model is really what's best. Because you could use an AMM initially to drive like price floors, but you can't really use that to drive like price discovery later moving forward. So maybe, to get the network effect of liquidity, use like something like a Uniswap pool, and then also top of that, like a low, could be like a 595 or something, like balancer pool with 5 of the alt or whatever, and then 95 of like a main trading pair stablecoin. And then you introduced a CLFB down the line once it's established a certain floor. I think a lot of projects have done that, but it's a debate that I don't really have a horse in the race at the current moment. I think AMMs are just interesting. I think there's a lot for them, a lot of ways for them to grow and improve. Definitely, I don't think at a wide scale use they could become the default, right? And across the industry, it's very like niche, I feel like right now. Beyond, like, why would you really provide liquidity in an AMM unless it's like a high IQ pool, like ETH wrapped ETH, like even like ETH wrapped BTC or something, right? Or the few that are like alt stablecoin. But even the alt stablecoin ones, you would have to provide liquidity for an alt that has liquidity in the first place. You wouldn't just do it on like any random ERC20, right? So I just don't like, the reason why these AMMs caught on is because of incentivized liquidity, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, if you go stake your LP tokens in another staking contract, will give you a token to farm and then get dumped on for it. And I think that's kind of just been lost in the narrative of it all. how much of this TVL and Uniswap was coming from, even like Uniswap provision mining was the reason why Uni got so much liquidity. But once those incentives die down, like where's that liquidity going to go? We've seen liquidity goes where the incentives are. The only project I've seen where like liquidity is gone, where there isn't any incentives, is based. So people are in this like mood-based contract, and it's providing 0 APY right now.
Yeah, I'm in there.
I'm in there too, bro.
I'm just getting wrecked by the negative rebases. My balance is smaller every day. It's like, oh, this is great. Price goes down, balance goes. And at this point, it's like it's just a passion project. Like I don't even care.
But you see, even then, like that's what's interesting about the base community is that what's like 70-something% of all base is in the MB based contract with no incentives, and people like aren't even dumped because they're just like, oh, like I guess it's a little bit smarter money with the guys with the big bags initially because it was marketed as a scam. So I think if you came in with decent size, you were like you understood how Uniswap works, like how farming works at like a gaming level, right? Beyond like, oh, this is just marketing mumbo jumbo. We're going to do this, that, or the other. And they're just taking it at a very pure value. But yeah, I think the base stuff is a really interesting like case study almost. And the ghouls, like they innovated that these NFTs that, you know, I think Dan from CMS also purchased one as well, where it's literally like 50K SUSD for an NFT, but the NFT is really a debt note. We get when version 1.69 comes out and like the base swap actually happens, they're doing some crazy stuff on a way to limit impermanent loss. Just a teaser. I don't really know what the sauce is though, but that's what I've heard. And yeah, it's just really interesting that, you know, purchase NFT and it's a new way to fundraise a project because we don't have any token to dump. But if the protocol takes off, we can earn up to like a 25% interest on how much we put down. And, you know, most capital allocators would jump out of 25% APR debt note with a 1 year to maturation, bro. Like that is a really interesting debt product. And that's where DeFi, I think, hasn't actually seen a lot of innovation is debt. When we can start figuring out different ways to trade debt, like what if I could trade my debt on Aave to other people? And that's a whole can of worms that I'm not even well versed enough to even think about how it's going to look. But that's where I see some of the stuff trending, and I thought the base is really cool. I think, you know, it's like one of those deep crypto projects where it just encompasses all the like memes of crypto without any of the bad, and the community just cracks me up. Like everyone in there is just hilarious. And
yeah, it's by far the most active community, and I'm in so many. Base is by far the one where people are just active. They're just so active. It's pretty wild, honestly.
Dogashi, whatever. He was like, if you go in the base Discord at night, people are literally listening to Mr. Bones' radio mix and just vibing. Also, Mr. Bones makes the best videos in the game. He makes like a lot of like the videos that the base Twitter tweets, and those are just straight awesome, bro. It's like a very weird intersection of vibey, trippy art and music and like tech, and it's just really interesting community.
Yeah, totally. No, I really like it. That's why I said I'm like, and I have it on firsthand knowledge that some of the big whales that had a lot already all sold out. So at this point, I'd say it's very well community distributed, unless someone comes in and buys a bunch. But that's also interesting in a project. So Sobes, what's the next move? So you're building your fund. You're working with Vector Space. Is that where all your energy is going? Do you have other stuff? You have a puppy now too, but there's some other stuff you want to look at, or is that kind of the focus for the next period of time?
Yeah, it's just fun stuff. I've been doing some consultancy. What I really want to start exploring is like other layer ones and just deep diving into them. I think like interoperability is going to be, I think pure interoperability is one entire market cycle away. And I think the next trend is going to be like blockchain agnostic stuff, or providing some type of transfer between chains and like the trading of those assets on the chain that you transfer to. But beyond that, yeah, I think I wouldn't say I'm spread too thin, but it's like, wow, being crypto full time and then also at like an innovative AI company that is also crypto is just so much time. You know, we live in like a international, it's like you really are dealing in international business, like talking to people in Asia, talking to people in Europe, in America, just all over the world. But yeah, I think that's basically what I've got going on so far. I'm gonna start doing a lot of NFT like art shows with my partner, and that's something that we're gonna start working on in a few months. And I'll keep you updated on that. And I think that's gonna be cool. It's like I want it to be something like a DevCon meets like Coachella vibe,
Hmm.
almost. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Keep me in the loop in there. Happy to see what you're up to.
Hell
And
yeah,
dude,
man.
thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon, brother. Thank
Bye,
you.
Cleo. Bye, cutie. He's so
Bye.
cute.
Say bye. Say bye. Oh, say bye.